Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we are talking once again about EVs, electric vehicles. This time about how to get power into them safely and securely. Now, almost exactly 2 years ago, my guest today launched a brand new business in response to her constant fears and frustrations over the variability of quality and lack of information about the increasing number of EV charging stations popping up all over the UK. And in comparison to the UK's petrol and diesel fueling network with its standardised pumps and fuel grades and covered forecourts, well, the EV charging network is really the Wild West. Or so it seems. And for many new and vulnerable EV users, it's an unnerving experience and in many cases a significant barrier to switching from fossil fuel power. Questions such as, will the charger work with my car? Will there be somewhere to get a coffee? Is there a loo? And fundamentally, will I feel safe? I mean, certainly there are some excellent charging stations being built, but equally there are many chargers popping up in the dark, windswept car parks off the beaten track in locations that, well, frankly, few would feel comfortable hanging out for the 30 to 60 minutes required to charge up. So my guest Kate Tyrrell her solution was Charge Safe, a new business that inspects charging sites and so helps EV drivers to identify which are suitable for your vehicle and provide accurate information on each of those sites' conditions. And it seems to be working because, well, this week they picked up a coveted EV, an Electric Vehicle Innovation and Excellence Special Recognition Award for their efforts. So let's hear how they are getting on. Kate Tyrrell, co-founder of Charge Safe, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Hello, Anthony. Thank you for having me.
Well, Kate, I'd say congratulations, first of all, on the award. I mean, it's a fantastic thing to get awards, and so well done on that.
Thank you so much. It was a really difficult category, and I think just to put it into some context for your listeners, the Special Recognition for Company Award is similar to Best Picture, the Oscars. So it's a really big one right at the end that everybody really wants. And, we were in such an amazing category. I really didn't expect to take that one home.
Well, brilliant. Well done. Well, let's talk about the business. I mean, in your words, I gave a small description of what it's all about. But in your words, how do you describe the business, Charge Safe?
Sure. So Charge Safe is a 5-star rating system that's been created to give better visibility to the EV driver so that they can make a more informed choice about where they choose to charge, whether it's their own personal security that is important, or if they are a disabled person and they have special requirements, accessibility needs that must be met. That information is also visible to them to make a more informed choice.
Okay, well, you co-founded the business with your partner, James Coyle. I mean, he's the tech expert of the pair of you, I believe. I mean, you're based near Portsmouth on the south coast. So what's your story then? Why did you start the business? Why do you think it was necessary?
Okay, so it's kind of a slightly romantic tale of sorts. James and I met on Tinder a few years back. Today we're actually married. So we got married earlier on this year, which was really exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. He was my partner when I drove to COP26 back in November 2021. And along the way, I was having some charging experiences and I was recalling this one particular experience to him about how I'd gone to an area and I'd tried 3 completely different networks, completely different environments of charger, and I felt really unsafe. And James is incredibly innovative and entrepreneurial. He is an absolute geek. And he studied games development at Southampton University. So for him, he was like, there must be a solution. We can actually do something about this. And he's got such a zest for just, spontaneously coming up with a solution that Charge Safe was really his idea, but typical, I like to take all the credit for it. So we fleshed out that idea on my massive road trip from Portsmouth up to Glasgow, pulling apart, what actually affects change. And we likened it to the hygiene rating that you have at a restaurant. We have visibility as to how seriously restaurants take their quality and their level of service. You can go on Trustpilot, you can go on TripAdvisor, you can see reviews from members of the public. We should be able to do the same for public charging infrastructure and hopefully influence positive change.
Okay. Building on that, you have your own independent inspections, but you also use Trustpilot style user reviews. I mean, how does the whole thing work? They all get mashed together, do they? And you get an overall rating.
Yes, so this is exactly where all of James's clever work comes into play. So he's developed an app, which means that members of the public, whenever they're sat at a charging station, they can log in, they can create an account, and they can answer. It's about a 20-question survey now, but we've made it super slick and simple so that they can flash through it, which will tell us roughly what the environment looks like, if there are facilities, if the charge point has worked for them, and give us a little window into their experience. And from that, it will flag up to our inspection team, which is an absolute priority to visit, so that an inspector can do the full 144-point inspection. And members of the public are incentivized via gamification on our app to get points equal prizes, to give us their feedback. So that's amazing. And James has done a cracking piece of work there to ensure that everything is as unbiased as it can be coming in from members of the public, but that we really reinforce those measures when we go out as a professional body.
It sounds fantastic. Well, certainly I'll put a link in the show notes so anyone that hasn't seen it can go and have a look. But I mean, I don't use an EV, but what I know is that most EV car companies have tech on board that directs you to the nearest or the best charger, whatever that is. I mean, how does ChargeSafe integrate with that? Is that the next step, or is that already happening?
Yeah, so that's very much in our planning. So we'd love to speak to more OEMs. We've already had a couple come to us who are interested. And at the moment, because we have such a vast amount of data, 144 different points for every charge point. And actually today, I know you mentioned about the April figure, but as it is today, there are over 50,000 public charge points available to drivers in the UK. And that milestone was hit just a few weeks ago. So that's really exciting. It's 50,000 charge points with 144 points of data per charge point, hopefully in the future. How do you then translate that to the driver in a way that's easy to consume, especially if you are driving and you're on the road and you're just trying to find the nearest charger? So we are doing work with the manufacturers to see how we can better supply the data to fit their needs. Essentially, yes, the mapping applications. So you've got like ZapMap, you've got WhatsApp, Waze, Google Maps, a better route planner. I'd love to see the ChargeSafe score in every single one of those, and within the vehicles themselves, just so that it's really easy for drivers to see, this is a ChargeSafe score of 2.7, or if I go right, there's a ChargeSafe score of 4.3. So they have a very quick, easy decision to make.
Well, now you're on the Infrastructure Podcast, I'm sure that people will be flooding in with people who want to work with you, not least because, as I said, that the National Infrastructure Commission has this ambition of seeing 300,000 more chargers installed by the end of 2030. And we'll talk a bit later about what actually constitutes a charger. But on the face of it, do you think that target is achievable? I mean, and how do you see the challenges that emerge when that number of chargers comes in over the next 5 years or so?
Ooh, that's such a good question. So basically what's happening right now with charging infrastructure, and the way I think that is easier to think about it is, if you think about what mobile phones were like 15, 20 years ago, we had a Nokia 3310, right? It had Snake on it.
The brick.
We could send up to 45 characters in a text message or whatever. But today we have these sexy, sleek smartphones, right, that we're all carrying around because the technology evolved with higher consumer use, feedback and competition coming in. But also there were a lot of network providers. There were different handsets, so your hardware, and they were acquired by bigger companies. So today we've got a lot of different hardware out there. So all the different mobile models out there. And we've got a lot of different networks out there. So what I think we're going to see in the next 15, 20 years, and certainly by the year 2030, is acquisition happening by the stronger businesses in the market. We'll scoop up those beautiful little independents that have started out with some really lovely independent targets. and they will be brought out. Those companies will become like the 5 dominant companies of the EV industry, and the tech will get better, it will get slicker, the measurements will conform with all of the regulations that are set out, and the user experience will just be as simple as it is to make a video call on your mobile phone today.
Right, and so we'll see the emergence of the kind of the branded BP or the branded Esso or the those kind of like very well known petrol diesel retailers that you can entrust the kind of the quality of the service you're going to get there.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is, what's really nice about BP and Shell, and there's a couple of other, I think, Euro garages, MFG, etc. They have already got the infrastructure set up to deliver a very user-friendly experience. They've got beautifully lit forecourts that are covered from weather issues. They've got they serve hot tea and coffee and hot food in their kiosks. They've got loos on site. It's all there. So if anybody has the best shot of getting an early high charge safe score, it's going to be those guys, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the key things on my mind is who pays for your service. I mean, I can see how thing operates, and I can see the value in it. But who pays for it? How do you generate revenue?
So we actually have several revenue streams. We have our API data licensing key, which companies can subscribe to. So with the API key, that will give businesses insight into what the overall score is of every charge site, along with customer feedback. We then have the pro inspection data, which is the 144-point criteria per site. So we do not share data across networks in the interest of, being completely independent, unbiased. So data is a very much one piece of our revenue stream, and there's different ways that we can chop that up and sell it. And then we've also got our accreditation platform. So right now what we're doing is we're going around and we're scoring something and we're saying to the companies, this is a 3.2. But what we haven't done up until very recently is given them the tools to really succeed. And we had so many businesses coming to us saying, Kate, this is great. We love what you're doing, but can you tell us what you're looking for? So we take them through a workshop where we go through every single measure in depth. We pull apart what a fantastic site looks like, why certain sites are terrible. We look at all the various environments that sites can go into and have a really good thought leadership discussion around some of their own designs. So this accreditation is delivered to installers. It could be the hardware manufacturers. It could be the networks themselves. It could be landowners. It could be engineers. It can be local authorities, anyone who has a part to play in delivering electric vehicle infrastructure can take our accreditation, become a ChargeSafe certified partner, and very quickly tick the box that says, what have you done to conform with the BSI PAS 1899 standard. So
that's a consultancy offer there at the end of it. So, I mean, fundamentally, the EV user is not paying for this. It's a service that you offer them in addition. And when I spoke to Azif Ghafoor on the podcast a few months ago from BEV, we talked about range anxiety being driven by lack of information. I think his comment was, the only people that have range anxiety are people that don't own an EV. But I suppose, his big beef was the focus and all the emphasis on the number of lamppost charges that are going in, because they are a visible representation, I suppose, of a local authority or someone doing something, when the reality is that the majority of, if you've got a 250 mile range car, then a lamppost is probably going to charge you, is probably going to add 50% of its battery charge in a 24-hour recharge. It's such a big battery in there that lamppost charger really isn't going to do as much charging as you need.
Well, actually, so as I say, I'm in Portsmouth, and although quite dramatically yesterday they shut off all of our on-street charging over some safety concerns, which I'm looking into, I have been using lamppost chargers in the city, and I can park it at about 5 p.m. when I get in from the office, And by the time I go out to the car the next morning at 8 a.m., it's fully charged and ready to go. And that with the Kona is a 64 kilowatt battery. So overnight, you still get to 100%. And it's really not too taxing. But the on-street chargers aren't as bad as you think they might be. Yeah, there's also companies, again, like the stuff that Azif's doing, but also Chargy. There's so many new solutions coming that I really would implore local authorities to very seriously entertain, because you said Wild West earlier, and I'll say it again. When the on-street charging was first rolled out, it was really two companies who already had relationships with those local authorities. And the quality of the charge install wasn't really scrutinised in as much detail as I believe it should have been. And now we're kind of learning the lessons from that.
Let's talk a bit about you, Kate. Your background is in brand and marketing consultancy. What have you learned along the way, from your background in luxury goods marketing, through to recruiting, corporate events, you've done relationship management in terms, what has it taught you in terms of, what makes good businesses work?
Good businesses are really founded on a genuine need. You identify that it's actually needed, and a passion from the founding team. So for me, I've never been able to stay very long in a job where I didn't feel passionate about the vision, the purpose, the why, the product. It has to be, authentic. It can't be false. It can't be greenwash. It can't be, ticking a pink box and saying, oh, we've got this many women on our team. Like, I'm not interested in that. I want to know, why does the company exist? How long has your longest employee been with you? How do you take care of people? And do I believe in your product? So I've worked for the likes of The Body Shop and Goodwood in Chichester. I'm sure the listeners will remember that as the Festival of Speed and Goodwood Revival. So really, really cool companies to work for that have just got such a bold brand and really strong mission statement. So for me, what I've been able to glean from that is I never would have started ChargeSafe if I hadn't felt validated or vindicated in my reason to do so. I was actually in a job at that time working for My Energy, who manufacture domestic chargers in the UK, and I loved that job so much. I really loved it. I was the partnerships and events manager. My job was to network with everybody in the industry, design some really cool event stands, come up with some marketing strategy around that. And it was such a fun job to do that I was so gutted when I had to contact Jordan and say, look, I think it's time to come away now because ChargeSafe, I have to do ChargeSafe. It was like a bittersweet thing. But, if you cannot have that passion and belief in your business, then you really shouldn't be in business.
Well, it's a tough time to be starting a business right now. I mean, am I right? I mean, do you have any time off? Is it full on right now with a startup?
Time off would be so nice. No, I don't get time off. So as I mentioned earlier, I got married in Barbados this year. So we went away for a week. It was the most cheap and efficient ways to get married, right? Is the sad truth. James and I hopped on a plane. We went to Barbados. We got married whilst we were in Barbados, leaving the holiday time to 7 days, meaning the wedding was actually free because it was done on a resort where if you stayed for 2 or more nights, you got the wedding thrown in. So as founders, we couldn't put on a huge party for family and friends. We don't drink alcohol either, so we wasn't interested in having a big booze up. We just wanted to relax, to get away, to get married. So for that 7 days, that was our wedding and honeymoon wrapped up into one. So that is the last time that I had like a week off, and that was in May. So to answer your question, no, I don't get time off.
I mean, and working with your partner must have its own challenges.
Oh yeah, it does. It's so funny. It's this constant battle of wills. But James has actually been quite fortunate in that recently. He's done some external contracting work for other people in the EV industry. So he's set us up with the app, and he gets very, he loves variety in his role. And I was like, you know what, James, if you can just go off and concern yourself with a project elsewhere for a little while, I think that would probably do us both some good. And then you can learn some stuff from somewhere else. So he went and did a project with Vital EV, which has been great for him. It's been really nice for us to have two totally different subject matters to focus on for a little while. And then we can come back to the dinner table at the end of the evening and not just talk about Charge Safe, which is great.
Fine. I know. I thought you were going to say he's been living away from Portsmouth for quite a long while now. But anyway, you describe yourself first, though, as an explorer, traveling in the Southeast Asia. Is that what because you are passionate about child safe, but you're also passionate about really tackling climate change, which of course is what the transition to EVs is all about. Is that explorer role what fired your passions?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So there are lots of different reasons why people will go to an electric vehicle, and that will be either because they're conscious about the climate, they're conscious about saving money, or they are really just loving the thrill of driving an EV because it is fun, it's techie, and it's awesome. But for me, it was very much about the climate, and that started when I went traveling about how old was I? I was 25, and that's almost 10 years ago now that I went traveling around Southeast Asia, and it started something for me because I could see in real time what was happening to that side of the world as a direct result of climate change. We're so privileged in the UK. I grew up in a working family in a council house, so I'm not like massively privileged, but we're so much more privileged than people in Southeast Asia. And I came back from my trip with just this whole renewed sense of I have to do something, because I felt incredibly guilty about my travel. But seeing it was like, I cannot ignore this.
And of course, energy transition is at the heart of this our tackling of the climate change emergency, which comes, electric vehicles have a huge role to play in that. But of course, we're still generating, an awful lot of power in this country from the use of fossil fuels. I mean, what influence can Charge Safe have around that switch towards renewable energy generation?
Absolutely. So, as we look forward to wind and solar energy generation and battery storage, I feel like moving forward, something that we're likely to do at Charge Safe is look at how the energy is generated, look at the business's commitment to a cleaner energy source. However, I'm not going to rush to put that into place just yet, because I know that it's such a difficult one for them to tick the box of. But the ones who are already doing really, really well in terms of just being inclusive as a charge point network operator will already have this on their agenda. But I don't want to move the goalposts too much in the early days of Charge Safe. I think that something like this will probably come into play between 2028, 2030, as we see the mass infrastructure delivered. And then we can go in and say, okay, this is great. Well done. How are you getting your energy? And what are your company policies on things like, inclusivity and having disability awareness and all of that stuff, just to make sure that they are the full package,
I mean, you said you're an EV driver yourself. I'd imagine that's kind of like comes with the territory. So you drive a Kona. Why did you choose that one? How do you make that kind of decision? Is it around range? Is it about comfort? Is it about price? What is it?
All of it. So for me, the Kona is ideal because it's around the 35k mark. So it's still super expensive, but on a lease plan, it's not so much. It's not one of the highest priced EVs on the market, but my God, is it so reliable. And what Hyundai did with that is they really just embraced the tech very early on. And as a result, they've been able to just build on something that is reliable. Like, I trust the Kona's range. For me, that's really important. I've driven a vast range of EVs where I have left the city, jumped onto the motorway, and straight away the juice just starts to fall very quickly because the vehicle doesn't expect you to drive at 70 miles per hour, and it loses that range. So doing that research is super important. The Kona tells me in the summer it's got over 300 miles range. In the winter, it will probably go down to 240 because it gets colder. But on average, it's around 280. And I trust that. And that's a 64 kilowatt battery. So what I would recommend is don't settle for any less than a 50 kilowatt battery. Check out the real world range. Definitely book yourself a test drive. But if you can, hire a vehicle for a few days. There are some great companies out there. I think doing something like that will help users understand the variety of the vehicles and how it's going to fit into their everyday lives. So for me, the Kona was affordable, it's reliable, and it is comfortable.
And don't bother with hybrids.
No, hybrids are not worth it. And so many people go to hybrids and then they kick themselves because they really enjoy it when it's in full electric mode. So just make that leap of faith. We have over 50,000 chargers on UK roads today. Every plug socket is essentially a charger. This perceived range anxiety no longer exists. It's more charger anxiety now. When am I going to get to the next charger? Is it going to be working when I get there? And the industry are taking very good care of that. So over the last 2 years, we've seen a significant improvement in infrastructure, and I have every confidence it's just going to go from strength to strength.
Despite, of course, the recent decision by government to delay the ban on the sale of petrol and diesel cars. I mean, that presumably is a disappointment to you, but is it a business challenge for you as well? Has it kind of introduced another set of jeopardies that you weren't expecting?
Yeah, 100%. So I would love to sit Rishi down and say to him, well done on your very blatant ploy to secure your seat, because that's all that was. It wasn't to benefit the industry. All of the OEMs, the manufacturers, the chairman of Ford came out with a really strong statement on it. And for me personally, I would love to sit him down and say, yes, thanks, Prime Minister. My lovely independent business that I have built from the ground up lost 2 investors over that decision. Wow. Because of the constant toing and froing that the government, it creates uncertainty and doubt in the market. But what I am thrilled to tell you, Anthony, is the industry is still working to 2030. We don't care what Rishi says. We already started this thing without the government's backing and support. They announced some stuff earlier this week in their budget about helping support EVs. How much can you trust this government? So I don't think the industry do either. And what we're looking for is private investment to build something really significant. Which, of course,
you're getting on board. I mean, businesses like Octopus Energy Generation, for instance, they've been investing quite heavily in the EV charging market, and I think you've got one of their team on your advisory board. I mean, what is the role of businesses such as, I mean, they're not the only player in the market, obviously, but such as Octopus, to really accelerate businesses like you and accelerate the EV uptake?
Yeah, so Octopus have Octopus Ventures. We would love to bring them on board. We've had conversations with them before, and they've definitely helped kickstart so many businesses in our industry. They have this first check fund, which just boosts a startup looking to create real change. And I think Octopus are just this wonderful example of how we can change what is the norm. It was Greg and his team coming forward and saying, we're fed up with the big 6 and we want to change how energy is sold and delivered to customers. I've had Greg on the phone because I text him and I said, Greg, I need some business advice. I wanted to lead and manage my teams in a similar way to Octopus. And he said, well, have you got a couple of minutes? And he called me and he spent 20 minutes on the phone to me. This guy is so busy, and he calls and gives me 20 minutes out of his day just to give me solid business advice. And I just think, the guy like that, it's no wonder that Octopus are there trying to fund everybody else's business to get off the ground.
Yeah. No, well done. I mean, certainly, yes, it's not an easy time when you get people like that who are supporting you. It must really give you that kind of that boost to make it all happen. I mean, you are driving for change. What would you say then? Finally, that in terms of the business that you're developing there, what would you say is the most commonly heard problem that you come across when your teams assess EV charging station?
It's really about the lighting and placement. So there's a lot of legacy infrastructure out there, Wild West again, where a lot of the networks and landowners just went out to the market and said, right, we'll whack this charger over there because that's where there's a grid connection, and it's out of sight from your customers, so you don't have to worry about it. And that's bad idea. That's the worst place to have put a charger. That is the biggest issue, is light it up, make it visible, let your users be seen.
So that's on the charging station side. What about the actual accelerating the whole EV revolution? What's the one thing that would really kind of make that take off in a much bigger way? What's stopping it really taking off?
So there's a couple of things, but the one big thing I would say is, so there is clearly an agenda happening with mainstream media sources. There are journalists out there who are putting out articles with lots of misinformation about the EV industry. Every time there's a fire, if you look at the Luton Airport fire, that happened. And the media came out and was like, we think it's electric. It wasn't electric. The electric vehicles were nowhere near that. The electric vehicle charging was in a different car park. So they keep pushing out all of this bull in an effort to get more readers. And actually what they're doing is grossly misinforming the public about the reality of going to electric. It's not going to break the grid. It's not going to cost you £70 every time you need to go and visit your mum who lives 10 miles away. It's not going to give you a shock if you drive an electric vehicle through a car wash. There's all of these silly myths. And actually, if we could just get out clear communication to the masses, that would be the biggest positive change.
Well, let's finish on a positive note, Kate, and talk about Charge Safe. What does success for you look like? How do you see the business changing to really, I suppose, accelerate where you want to be?
Right. So I'm glad you asked, because the accreditation is really starting to shape us as a business. We will be delivering the accreditation to Transport for Wales in the next couple of weeks. We've had huge companies like Arcadis have taken it, Swarco have taken it, Pogo have taken it. We are massively getting big on those bookings now, and it's just setting a standard that the entire industry can really hold on to. We are lobbying the government to make it mandatory and make it a legislation for charge sites to be safe and accessible, rather than just an advisory, because at the moment it's very much being taken as advisory, and therefore it's something that they don't have to conform to, which is wrong. So that's a huge thing that we're working on right now, but we want global domination, so we're going out to try and change the infrastructure delivery in the US and Canadian market. So that's a really big one for us next year. We've still got our eye on Australia, and as Europe have been front running on this for a while now, right? So we would love to go over and catch up with Europe, but as each market kind of clicks into place, we want to be ready. We want to have that local knowledge on the ground, and we want to be able to go out there and support those governments delivering their own policies.
Kate, clearly Charge Safe is one to watch. A huge amount for us all to think about there, and a huge amount for us all to follow. So thanks very much, Kate, for joining me on the Infrastructure Podcast today.
Thank you very much, Anthony.
Great. Thanks. That's all we've got time for today. But we've got more from the Infrastructure Podcast in the pipeline, and more guests to talk to as we continue to probe the big issues faced across the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website. That's www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you'll find background information to the issues discussed today, and lots of links to all the things that Kate was talking about there, and all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share with colleagues. So thanks again for joining us. Thanks again to Kate, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.